Your voice, your opinion, your community. Fact TV, free speech protected.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us once again. My name is Bill Morse, and I wish to welcome you to the Thursday, September 2nd edition of What Do You Think? We're on the air. This is a call-in program. We're on the air every Thursday from 5:45 to 6:30, and as always, you're welcome to call in on this, what we're talking about, or any other subject that you feel is important and is worthy of attention. We have one caller right now. Kurt, can you hear me? Could we check and see if is there an issue on our end? Please, just one moment, please. The number is showing, but
nothing wrong on our end.
Nothing wrong? Okay. All right. Well, Kurt, if you can hear me, if you're watching right now, your number is up on our screen, but I'm not getting any response. So anyway, press 6 or whatever it is that that may have helped. Do we have the same Zoom information as last week?
Mm-hmm.
We do.
Double check a couple more things, but I think everything's working right. Well, you were muted.
I was muted. Oh.
All right. Kurt was watching on YouTube.
Okay.
Go ahead and rejoin. We got it figured out.
Okay, very good. Again, thank you for your patience. Again, this program is called What Do You Think? My name is Bill Morse. This is a call-in program. And today is Thursday, September 2nd, 2021. And we had one caller. If that caller would like to call back, there was a little misadjustment of controls on my end. So again, thank you for your patience. As you know, we've been discussing parallels between the United States military experience in Vietnam some 45 years ago. And there we go. Welcome aboard, Kurt. Try it again. I'm seeing sound vibrations coming from the phone, but no audio. Is there anything I can do on my end? The phone icon, when Imagine Kurt is speaking, there are sound vibrations coming out of it.
Be coming through in speakers.
Okay, we're checking.
isn't working.
Okay. So a moment's patience, please.
Kurt, can you try again?
Kurt, could you try speaking again, please? Oh, he's hearing us.
See if you hear us. Zoom is having an issue. We're going to try rebooting it.
Okay. We're going to reboot and see if that clears up the issue.
Alright. Blah, blah, blah. I'm showing us coming in. It's really strange. Oh. I don't have a clue what is going on.
Okay.
Okay, so the computer speakers are working.
Yes.
Zoom's not coming through them. I don't have anything else plugged in. It's set to come through my computer speakers. I'll make this a troubleshooting show. We can talk
Okay.
about it all. Right now, I'm pulling up YouTube to make sure the speakers are working. You know, I already heard system sound through it.
Okay, so the speakers are working off of YouTube.
Well, I'm checking that. Speaker issues. The solution to this is I have some external speakers just outside the door somewhere.
Okay.
Try that.
But my audio is going out?
It should be.
Okay, let me, all right, Kurt, just stand by. We're going to try something else out, but I'm assuming that you can hear me because you did try to speak, and we could see the icon activate with sound vibrations. So again, I wanted to continue making comparisons because I think this is important between our experience as a country in Vietnam 45 some odd years ago, the 60s and then the early 70s, and our experience in Afghanistan over the last 20 years. I received some information I thought would be interesting to share. This information is from the U.S. Government Accounting Office, and it details exactly what was left behind by our military in Vietnam. As you may already know, our efforts in Afghanistan, our efforts in Afghanistan over the last 20 years have cost us over $2 trillion. $2 trillion since 2001. And since 2001, there have been 2,430 U.S. military killed in action. There have been over 22,000 U.S. military wounded in Afghanistan over the past 20 years. And there have been more than 1,645 what they call major limb amputees. That is a person that has lost their entire arm or leg. In some cases, they have lost more than one limb, generally because of a bomb explosion. And if you remember, we started the Afghanistan operation with many of our soldiers unprotected. And I remember at the time, this was the early 2000s, and Donald Rumsfeld was I believe he was the Secretary of Defense. And he says, you go in with what you have. In other words, we don't have the proper equipment to protect our soldiers, but we're going in anyway, and we're going to engage terrorists or the Taliban. So getting back to the cost of equipment, $85 billion in equipment. And I'll give you a list of, according to the Government Accounting Office, what that entails, what was left over in Afghanistan and is now in the hands of the Taliban. So $85 million will buy 22,174 Humvees. This is the vehicle that replaced the Jeep. 634 Mi-147 vehicles. I admit I did not look up what exactly those vehicles do. Mi-147, perhaps if you're interested, you would look this up. 155 mine-proof vehicles were left behind in Afghanistan. 169 armored personnel carriers were left behind in Afghanistan. Now, generally, these vehicles were left behind at one of the more than half a dozen military bases that our troops occupied. There were also other NATO bases. This does not include equipment that was left by NATO troops, for example, the Germans or the Brits. 42,000 pickups and SUVs. SUVs were left in Afghanistan. All this, of course, now in the hands of the Taliban. 64,363 machine guns were left in Afghanistan. 8,000 trucks were left in Afghanistan, now in the hands of the Taliban. 162,043 radios left in Afghanistan. This is part of the 85 billion with a B worth of armament and equipment left behind. 16,035 night vision goggles were left behind in Afghanistan. 358,530 assault rifles were left behind in Afghanistan, now in the hands of the Taliban. 126,295 pistols were left in Afghanistan. All these numbers are according to the U.S. Government Accounting Office. 176 artillery pieces were left behind in Afghanistan. Now, let's go to airborne equipment. 33 Mi-17 helicopters left behind by our military commanders. 33 UH-60 Blackhawks, 33 Blackhawks left behind in Afghanistan. 43 MD-530 helicopters left behind in Afghanistan. 4 C-130 transport planes. These fly tanks, heavy equipment. They were also left behind at bases in Afghanistan by our military commanders. 23 EMB fixed-wing aircraft, 28 Cessna 208s left behind by our military commanders in Afghanistan, and finally 10 Cessna AC-208s, a variation of the previous aircraft left behind in Afghanistan. The total bill to taxpayers for all this equipment that is now in the hands of the Taliban is $85 billion. And of course, we do not forget the 2,430 American military that were killed in action over the last 20 years, the over 22,000 wounded, and the 1,645 amputees that came home from Afghanistan over the last 20 years. So, in keeping with our focus on parallels between the U.S. experience in Vietnam and the more recent experience in Afghanistan, we're going to look at about 12 minutes and 30 seconds of an orientation film that was put out by the U.S. Marines in 1967. By the way, Kurt, are you there?
I am.
Excellent. Welcome aboard. I'm sorry it took a little while to adjust the controls and deal with a speaker issue, but welcome aboard.
We're good. Thank your engineer there. I appreciate his help.
No, not at all. And of course, anybody who wishes to join, please, you're more than welcome. The numbers are down below, the two sets of numbers that you need to join us here on the air for What Do You Know? So, Kurt, do you have any reaction or any feedback on these numbers that I just finished reading off from the Government Accounting Office, the GAO?
Well, it's kind of interesting because the general that finally announced that we have left Afghanistan made some poignant comments saying that, you know, of the machinery they left behind, there was an implication that they were left immobile. And as we know from seeing news footage, they're quite cheerily running around in helicopters and Humvees and everything else. So I don't know what to necessarily believe, but it is a staggering amount of armaments, knowing that they had till the end of the month. That it's surprising they would leave that much hardware there. Plus, I know, like with Black Hawk helicopters and so forth, a lot of that technology is sensitive and you just don't want out. And we didn't do a good job when we pulled out. It seemed to be ill-planned.
Yes, there does seem to be a wide variation in versions of what actually happened. And I would like to believe that this equipment was left immobilized. But as you've said, there has been film footage, video evidence to the contrary, that the trucks do run, the helicopters do fly, and that we're not dealing with ignorant guerrilla warriors who are actually dealing with rather intelligent young men who have more of a will to fight and win, evidently, than our military commanders. And I say commanders because in no way do I lay any blame to the foot soldiers, the people that are in the trenches that are carrying out these orders. My beef is with the higher-ups that for 20 years have been feeding us a rosy narrative or no narrative at all, and then within a few months or weeks, everything collapses like a house of cards. And I think we, Americans, first off, we've been betrayed by our military leadership as to what the seriousness and the nature of the conflict in Afghanistan. And as I think the film will show from Vietnam in 1964, our understanding of who we are dealing with is extremely limited. So I'm going to, unless you have a further comment, I think we're on the same page there, Kurt. It's difficult to say with certainty what is going on because of so many versions that are coming out from correspondents or the military brass themselves. I would hope that this stuff is disabled, but I believe it isn't. It's almost like we intentionally supply the Taliban and by leaving this equipment behind. To a casual observer, it would certainly seem that way. So I don't know if we're going to get to the bottom of this, why so much was left behind, and if there will ever be a serious discussion as to what happened and what mistakes were made along the way, and if people will be held accountable. Again, I'm saying I fault the presidents, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden, who was the vice president under President Obama, for kicking the can down the road. And so I think they all, every administration since 2001 shares some responsibility in misrepresenting and ignoring red flags all over the place dealing with the circumstances of this conflict. So if you don't have anything else to add at this time, Kurt, I'm going to ask that we go into the film. Is there anything else you'd like to additionally comment on?
I would, but I'll wait until after the film.
Okay, cool. All right, again,
Thank you.
What's that?
No, thank you.
No, not at all. So again, this is a U.S. Marine orientation film that came out in 1967. It's called You in Vietnam, and we will be watching the first 12 minutes and 30 seconds, roughly half the length of this film. So if we could start the viewing, please.
Vietnam is a long strip of coastal land about the size of California. I Corps, or the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force Area, covers the 5 northern provinces of South Vietnam. Chu Lai, Danang, Phu Bai are the principal bases in this area. From the seacoast and a narrow, fertile lowland plain, the land rises to a thinly settled Piedmont region. These foothills lead to jungle highlands running along the country's western border. Danang is the principal city in the 3rd Marine Amphibious Force area. Danang Air Base is one of the busiest airports in the world today. Like cities everywhere, Danang has changed more than its surrounding countryside and may seem more familiar to you. But ancient ways are slow to die. Danang presents a mixture of the very old with the new, imported from the West. A major market where people congregate to buy and sell. Danang is also a busy seaport. The city is a cultural center for this region. Cao-Dai temples, Buddhist temples and shrines, and Christian churches attest to the deeply religious nature of the Vietnamese. North of Danang is the city of Hue, 50 miles below the demilitarized zone dividing North and South Vietnam. Capital of the ancient empire of Annam, the centuries-old imperial palace still survives along with its fort. Not far away, there is a port at the mouth of the Hue River. Fishing is the main source of income for the prosperous Vietnamese who live along the coast. Yet even coastal fishermen plant rice. Rice is this country's major crop. Most Vietnamese are farmers living on the fertile lowland plain between the seacoast and the Piedmont. Control of this rich area would give the Viet Cong captive rice and manpower to sustain his drive into the south. The hamlet and village homes of almost 2 million people crowd together here. An understanding of village life is the key to a broader understanding of Vietnam and the Vietnamese. For thousands of years, the village has been, as it still is, the basic social unit in Vietnam. Each village has its shrine and patron saint. You will be engaged in more than battle in Vietnam. You will be deeply involved in the lives of its people. Their land differs from our own. Their experience has not been ours. The Chinese, the French, the Japanese have been here as conquerors. You have to convince them we are here as friends. The village chief speaks for his people. Like the chief, the village elder is a much respected, even venerated man. In the Piedmont or foothill country, there are fewer villages. The mountains are even more thinly settled. But wherever you go in this country, one fundamental rule applies. The customs of the Vietnamese must be considered and, wherever possible, observed. The people treated with respect. The Piedmont area separates the lowland from jungle highlands. Movement through this hilly country can be slow and difficult. Streams are plentiful here and throughout Vietnam, but the water must be purified for drinking. During the rainy season, even streams can turn within hours into rivers you may have to ford. The mountains in this tropically hot and humid country are topped with jungle growth. But there are many well-marked footpaths here. These occasionally lead to villages of the Montagnards. Their villages are small, the houses built on stilts. These mountain people are tough and durable. They move through their rugged terrain with ease to hunt. They farm where they can burn off jungle growth to plant their rice. They fight well when they choose to fight. But you will spend most of your time in Vietnam on the coastal plain. Most often meet the people who live in lowland villages. Like communities everywhere, the village serves as a marketplace. It is also the precarious home of people who, for over a century now, have fought for their liberty. Since 1946, they have been continuously at war. They are determined to survive. But by our standards, the Vietnamese are poorly clothed and poorly housed and poorly fed. They live and work much as their ancestors did hundreds of years ago. There are more than economic reasons for this. To the Vietnamese, the passage of time is of little concern, and so is change. They strive for harmony with things as they are, and work for perfection in everything they do, no matter how much time this takes. There is a hard-won harmony with the land. Many believe that to achieve this harmony with their demanding tropical world, the highest wisdom is to want only the bare necessities of life. But change has begun. Now they are harvesting crops unknown to them a while ago. Yet change is costly, and the village farmer poor. His only real possession is the water buffalo that pulls his plow. Its value represents a whole year's income. He earns less than $300 a year with endless labor, his wife often working at his side. For days they work in water that nourishes their rice and also serves as a breeding place for mosquito-borne malaria. They are small in stature because for generations they have carried a burden of infectious tropical diseases and lived on a diet of almost rice alone. The village woman, even smaller than her husband, works as hard as he does in the field. She also works at home. Yet with her children, she's kind and gentle. The homes of these people are small and may seem crude, but their family life is rich and warm and has always been so. They are a quiet people of great personal dignity who grow old with grace. Small though they are, the Vietnamese men are determined fighters, committed to the defense of their village homes. Their young men serve in popular forces, full-time volunteers recruited for local defense. These troops are answerable to local chiefs. Simple but intelligent, content with little, their civilization old and rich, but their lives depressed by centuries of poverty, oppression, and disease. Caught up in a war and yet determined to be free, these are the people of Vietnam.
Okay, very good. Again, we've been watching over the last 12 and a half minutes a film produced in 1967 for the orientation of U.S. military personnel specifically U.S. Marines going over for a tour of duty in Vietnam. So, Kurt, any initial reactions to the film we just saw?
Well, just thinking back of how they present the Vietnamese and what a kind and cultured, quiet people, and how they're to be treated with respect. And then I think of what happened at My Lai. I don't know if the viewers would know about that, but yeah, somewhere this the training didn't get all the way through. Of course, they went to fight a war, but yeah, I don't know what a good presentation that would be to a new combatant going there and trying to acclimate them to a totally different culture, which is obviously the same thing that happened in Afghanistan.
Yes.
I'll defer to you.
I believe My Lai, Corporal, Captain Calley was his name. Does that ring
correct.
a bell? Calley,
good.
William Calley.
Yep.
How about that, William Calley? William Calley was a captain leading a patrol. No, he wasn't a captain. I gave him a promotion that he did not earn. He was a lieutenant.
Kelly, though. You're right on that one.
He was a lieutenant. It's coming back to me.
Okay.
I hadn't thought of this in years, but Lieutenant William Calley, I believe it was in 1968, a year after this film came out, and he was in charge of a platoon, a group of soldiers that basically went in and they had orders to kill everyone in a village. Does that sound right, Kurt?
Correct.
Yeah, liquidate a village and then erase it, burn it down. And they started doing this, and there was intervention from a helicopter pilot who saw what was going on, landed his helicopter with his crew, and basically shielded the remaining villagers from the platoon that was carrying out their orders to liquidate the village. And I believe that's when it was stopped. And I'm extraordinarily, and I say extraordinarily because this doesn't often happen, I'm not sure these types of operations were how often they occurred, but I'm sure this was not an isolated incident. And Lieutenant William Calley was brought to trial and was held responsible. I'm not sure what happened to him afterwards. I know he went to prison. Kurt, do you have any idea?
No, I lost track. I mean, that's 55 years ago.
Yes, exactly.
Almost,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but I thought it was interesting because here we are again halfway around the world. One place in Southeast Asia, another part of Asia, And we're in a country where the topography is very different. You had, as the narrator said, you had a coastal area, a planting area, which he called like the Piedmont of Virginia, and then a mountainous area. And we already met some of the people from the mountains. They're called montagnards, or mountain people. And they were our allies, to the point where we actually brought many of them back in 74 or 75, just as we're bringing back some Afghan refugees that were helpful and whose lives are now in peril with the onslaught of the Taliban. So different climate, different topography. Afghanistan, 60% of the country is 5,000 feet and higher. So you've got a higher elevation, less oxygen in the air, very dry, hot climate during the day, cold at night. Very, very different from the United States. Differences in religion, obviously. I wouldn't say communism is a religion. It's kind of like the lack of it, but it is a replacement for religion and those who promote this way of social structure. And then you have the Taliban, whose religion and a certain set of fundamental values that they wish to instill. And whereas the threat to South Vietnam came from the North Vietnam, the threat to Afghanistan came from Pakistan, which is where the Taliban was training and holding up, where the actual Taliban movement started. So, any other comments, Kurt, other than Lieutenant Calley and some of the abuses or the massacres that had taken place?
No, not regarding the film. I would like to make a comment before you cut for the day, if I could.
Sure, please do.
You want me to do that now?
Sure.
Okay. I just wanted to mention when we were talking about Afghanistan and watching the general saying how that they've finally wound up the end of the war, and he had considered it was fairly successful, the mass exodus of personnel from the airport over the last couple of weeks rather than the last 6 months. But one of the things I was concerned about, I voiced earlier, another program, was I was very worried about once this did finally the end date come, that there'd be Americans left. And I hate to tell you that one of the other engineers that works with me, 3 doors down from him is a family whose daughter is unfortunately stuck in Afghanistan. She has tried to get out for the last month. The Taliban, she was a school teacher along with 20 others. They're in a building in a remote province, and the Taliban will not let them exit the building. And she's been in contact with military and State Department last week saying, what can I do to get out? They're not letting me go. They says, you've got to leave. And he said, I can't. They won't let me leave the building. Well, here we are today, and she's still in Afghanistan. Her parents are totally beside themselves, not knowing if their daughter will get out and what the program's going to be with them. But my concern was similar to like how we felt when the embassy people were taken in Tehran. We've got more hostages now, and that's basically what they're going to be. They're either going to be hostages, bargaining chips, or martyrs for us, and I'm very concerned. We haven't got an accurate number from the news media or military as to how many are left there, but their ability to bring them back now is certainly hampered because we're basically out. I don't know who's going to get them. They say we're going to try through diplomatic means. Well, pray for them. Thank you very much.
No, I certainly we will keep them all in our prayers, but first of all, not that it makes... Is the school teacher American, Kurt?
Yes, she's American.
Okay.
Not all of the other people that were teachers that were with her in this building, they're not all American, but the fact that they were with Americans in a school, that will not bode well for them.
No,
And
and I think this is what many people ignore or do not know is that, and we've discussed this, the Taliban lives by Sharia law. And Sharia law comes from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad in the Quran, which is their version of the Bible or the Holy Book. And they are quite straightforward in saying that anyone who tries to counter the teachings or the principles of the Quran faces death through a tribunal or a judge, a religious or Islamic judge, Islamic tribunal. And we are ignorant of that. And again, I bring up the case where I saw a film. There was a female American correspondent, I'll call her, who asked 3 Taliban members, and this was 2 to 3 weeks ago, if you take over, will you allow women to hold public office? And their jaws dropped. Obviously, not only will they not allow women to hold public office, but they will certainly have a second class. They will certainly be subjugated to their husbands, and it's going to be a very male-oriented society. And that's the way it's been for a couple of thousand years, and this is what we don't understand. When President Obama, and I'm going to zero in on him because President Obama and presidential candidate Hillary Clinton espoused nation building. They sold it as if this is something that can be achieved in 5, 10, 20 years. You do not change a way of life that has existed for 2,000 years in 20 years. It's arrogant and it's dangerous. I really, and you brought this up, we're over there because of revenge. Revenge for 9/11, the attack. And incidentally, there was a deadline for our troop withdrawal, and that was given as 9/11 by President Biden. I don't know why that changed from 9/11 to now. We're obviously not waiting till 9/11. And we've hightailed out of there, and we've left people behind. Evidently, there's 23 school children from California in Afghanistan left behind. I don't know what the hell they were doing there, but they are there. The staff from your school, your friend's daughter's school, and many other schools that taught women and their daughters, young ladies, young girls, they're going to be, at best, they're going to be found a husband, at best, if they're lucky. Because, again, this is Sharia law. This is where ignorance over Vietnam, the people that live there, the threat or the people that we see as a threat, in one case, communism, this case, more recently, the Taliban, we don't understand either of them. We go in there with our military hardware, our technology, and we say, we can do this. Mission accomplished, according to President Bush. Doesn't work that way. And if anything, there should be a groundswell of anger and demanding for a demand for explanation as to where in the last 20 years we were going. Who held the roadmap? Who made the decisions to turn right, to turn left, to go straight ahead, to slow down, to speed up? If we learn anything from this experience, which I'm hoping we do, but we haven't learned anything from Vietnam, it's that we as a citizenry have not been involved enough, have not been informed enough. We have not been in close enough contact with our representatives in Congress and in the Senate. We have not pressed enough for information, accurate information, and we've been living in a bubble. And the bubble burst over the last couple of weeks, and there's a fallout. I pray for the people that are left behind because they are going to feel the wrath against America's military occupation of Afghanistan. So there was one other thing I wanted to bring up. It's just the parallels. The parallels are there if you wish to look for them and if you wish to learn from them. I don't know if in our present culture, if we are any better equipped to understand and demand answers, or if we just continue going about our daily business. So, aside from the people who are personally affected by our actions in Afghanistan, be the family of military that have fallen or that have been injured, or civilian populations that have tried to work for a change without proper military support. The House of Cards, military support, Afghan army. His name's not Karzai. Karzai was the first puppet president. It was another one. Garza begins with the letter G. He's somewhere in the United States, exile. So he left. I'm sure his top generals left. And it's like all over again. A civilian puppet government that did not have the support of the people. Just as it was in Saigon, South Vietnamese government did not have the support of the people. It was corrupt, just as the Afghan civilian government has been corrupt. And we've ignored it in both cases. All right, I'm sorry, Kurt, to bring this on such a somber note,
Okay.
but all I can hope for is that people realize what is happening, they question it, and they pressure their political representatives for answers. And I'll say this and then we'll go off the air. I've been in contact with the communications person for our governor, one of our two senators, Senator Patrick Leahy, who has been in office since 1977. He was sworn in 77, Senator Patrick Leahy, and I asked the communications officer in his office, communications person, what has the senator been doing in response to the chaos that has erupted from the American and the NATO withdrawal from Afghanistan. And the answer was, well, the Senator Leahy, has spoken with people, correspondents on NPR and other commercial broadcast media, and he also directed a joint letter to the president asking for a more efficient pullout and a more humanitarian effort to rescue as many people as possible. And he also mentioned a press release that was dated the 24th of August. I read the press release and I was heartened to see that the senator is interested in looking at what went wrong over the last 20 years. Well, part of it was I'm a little frustrated because he has been there the entire 20 years, and he has enjoyed bipartisan support from both sides of the aisle, Democrat and Republican. And I would expect some answers. So I haven't heard back from his communications person. Hopefully I will, because I said this is important to not just wring our hands over the chaos, but to look at the last 20 years of so-called nation building, and why our efforts were not only ineffective but dangerous, and have put many people's lives in jeopardy and have cost many lives. So that's it, Kurt. Anything else you would like to add? Any cherry on this disgusting Sunday?
No, I think I'm done for today. I just following to see what the news comes about for the next week or two, and see what if any plans come out on how to get our rest of our citizens out, and any other Afghanis that supported us. But I just pray that this doesn't end up being something like, a lot of, Americans who just want to see this swept under the rug and move on. We can't keep doing that either. I mean, people put their lives at stake, and they deserve more than this.
You mentioned the possibility of hostages. I concur. I think that the people, the Americans that are left behind, unfortunately not the Afghanis, but the Americans that are still in Afghanistan, will be treated as hostages. And the Chinese Communist Party has already recognized the Taliban as the legal and legitimate government of Afghanistan. If I had a crystal ball, I would say that China would act as a third party in negotiating a deal between the United States and the Taliban for the release of our hostages. Do you think that's a realistic
to be honest with you, whether it's realistic or not, I hope that they do engage in that, because, I mean, these Americans are bargaining chips at this point, and I would hate, to see our diplomatic efforts go in vain, for whatever they do plan to do with them. I just wish somebody would intervene, and the Chinese in other parts of the world have already, like in Africa, have already started to move in as a worldwide international entity. So they're hopefully, if they provide help, all the better.
Right, and I hope that whatever happens is accurately reported on by our media, our mainstream media. That has not always been the case. Fortunately, there are independent media outlets out there that do provide a fuller, more accurate picture of what is going on. One note, and then we'll say goodbye. I noticed the narrator made a comment about the agricultural workers in Vietnam. There was a fellow building something with tying together some type of construction element for a building or something. And he mentioned that the Vietnamese are very slow workers, but they get the job done right. Do you remember the narrator saying something along those lines?
I may have not captured that part of the film. I didn't get the chance to see the film because I had to get the audio for this your
got
image
it.
as well.
All right.
I saw the images, but I didn't see all of it or get all the audio.
Well, anyway, when he said that they're slow but get the job done right, I thought of an auto mechanic that has worked on my truck before. And he is slow, but he gets the job done right. So, with that, we're going to say goodbye, and we'll be on the air next Thursday from 5:45 to 6:30. Kurt, I thank you for joining us and giving us your input. As always, very valuable and thought out. And we'll talk again soon.
Well, thanks again for having me.
No, not at all. Cheers. And everybody, have a good weekend coming up. Take care, and please remember these people left behind against their will in Afghanistan, and pray for their safe return and settlement of civilians that wish to leave and come over to our country, as we did with the Vietnamese 45 years ago. So take care, and God bless.